One of the things I wanted to that there was sort of a news jump in was this story that came out that German authorities have put out a warrant for a Ukrainian diver who they believe may be responsible for blowing up Nord Stream 2. Okay, this is after the Chinese yesterday said that they accidentally dragged an anchor across one of the pipelines from Estonia, bursting it, and obviously this could be them kind of tacitly admitting that they may have done this too. That doesn't matter, because if we go over here, if I may, jump over to this one, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rusty Trombone's show, and I'll see if I can restart it, if it shows the
German media are reporting that prosecutors.
Okay, sorry. So they're playing the it plays right away. It's got another one of these like thumbnails where he's just, and the title of this is "They Did It." Now, granted, you'll recall that when Seymour Hersh was on his bullshit tour about how the U.S. National Guard sent a team of divers over to blow up the Nord Stream 2, and he had special information from one of his intelligence dudes, which, by the way, can we just say that anybody with a constant intelligence feed as a reporter that's giving him this kind of like once in a lifetime, only you intel might be full of shit, right? Would that occur to anybody? That maybe, just maybe, either that guy is using him because he's a useful idiot, or he's making it up, or the person he's talking to has a particular agenda and only calls him up when he wants to do some damage to, say, Democrats in office, because it certainly times out that way throughout all of Seymour Hersh's career. Anyways, so they did it, right? Here we go. So
here have issued an arrest warrant for
So here's his start of it.
Its greatest ever front. Why I say the Nord Stream pipeline story was so exciting is because when that story broke, we saw that wave of information. The Nord Stream pipeline, it was blown up by Putin. Putin did it himself. And then quite quickly, due to social media, we talk a lot about its eels and ales, but one of its benefits is new nodes and networks of communication can emerge to convey truth. But the Nord Stream pipeline story showed
there's also a shit ton of edits in this.
That the first wave of propaganda could easily be thwarted and opposed by an informed public. What do you imagine the establishment fears most? Misinformation that leads to unrest in the streets, or information that challenges the authority that they need to control us?
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, this is a ploy to get his gullible viewers to comment below his videos, because that's one of the ways you game the algorithm and earn space you don't deserve. So both of those are again terminal hypothesis. They're stupid. There's no way of knowing, and it's really a way of testing the bias of your audience. But the primary idea that, do you think the establishment hates misinformation that will cause unrest in the streets? Well, if the establishment actually believes in the government that they're a part of as duly elected representatives, yeah, I think that'd be concerning. If a lie made a bunch of people, if a lie set off a bunch of Timothy McVeighs and mixed with George Floyd protests, yeah, I think that'd be worrisome. Or the other side, that they'll lose control if the truth gets out. Well, in this particular case, this asshole has sold 3 different versions of this story so far, and this is the 4th.
In the chat, let's have
the 4th
look at this story about the German police seeking the Ukrainian diver that presumably was involved in the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline. Remember, at the time, we had Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, on the show, and we asked, would you be able to do that? Would it be possible for a Special Forces team to undertake the sabotage of a pipeline?
Yeah.
And he'd say, Yeah, that'd be no problem. Blowing up a pipeline.
Yes. Can you do it versus did you do it? Jesus. It's so lazy. And we watched that when it happened. I remember us covering some of the footage he was doing. Again, you'll notice he's having Jocko Willink on there because Jocko's saying, yeah, a team could do something like that. Because of course they could. They'd need permission from like the Norwegians or the Russians to get past them. They'd have to be able to take out the cameras that show the area. That also is kind of crucial to the idea, right? They'd have to make that happen. But if they did it, they could absolutely blow it up. It's not like it's a heavily guarded thing. It's just heavily watched. And if you could limit who's watching at the time, you could blow it up and skulk away in the darkness. Absolutely. The question isn't like, could they do it? It's the assertion that they did. That he was, in that same interview, he was asserting that the U.S. government had done it, and that Seymour Hersh said that dudes from the National Guard were sent over. At this point, if it wasn't for this piece of news, they'd probably start saying that Tim Walz did it himself.
I'd do that before breakfast, he said. And I don't think it was a euphemism. Let's have a look at this story.
German media are reporting that prosecutors here have issued an arrest warrant for a suspect behind the 2022 explosions on the Nord Stream gas pipeline. It is believed that the Ukrainian man was one of the divers who allegedly planted explosive devices. 2 underwater explosions were registered on the Nord Stream pipelines off the Danish.
We know all this, but they do a whole look at this. Look how much
that yacht and used it to prepare this attack. And since then, there's not really been much news.
Like Russell is playing how much of this? Yeah, he
this,
plays
and
like
today,
he plays this. I think this is the most standout part of this whole clip. Not only is Russell just pretending that he wasn't all in on the U.S. did it, and Seymour Hersh was like, yeah, I know the names of the guys that did it. I know everybody who was in charge. Like that, he was selling this hardcore that this was like Joe Biden himself calling for the destruction of pipeline, the greatest act of terrorism against civilian infrastructure in our time. It was going to push us to World War III. Remember all that bullshit? I mean, it was the hard sell nonstop. And you'll notice he's not going anywhere near it. He's not bringing clips back of Seymour Hersh. Remember when Seymour Hersh told us he knew who did it? Turns out it wasn't them at all. No, he's playing almost an entire clip of this of DW and this German news agency, right? Almost the entire thing, while telling us that the mainstream news cannot be trusted. And the establishment, meaning not just in the United States, but obviously the Pentaverate, whoever runs the EU, the UN, all that stuff, who obviously control this as well, are selling us another line of bullshit. But this part's believable, right?
we may be a bit closer to finding out who it is if these reports...
What I'm trying to say is I would file this under, sure, the Earth is flat, but why is the moon round, asshole? You see what I mean? There's this... Right.
Are indeed correct.
Even tonally, this news report is somewhat anomalous, isn't it, for those of us that have become accustomed to an unceasing deluge of fast and fatuous information. Just to pause and stop for a moment and be reminded that the Nord Stream pipeline was likely blown up by Deep State Operatives.
What? Deep State Operatives? Well, you think bureaucrats in the U.S. government did this? They said this is... I mean, how dumb? This dumb. Look at this. Look at this asshole's face. Look at him. Look at his big ass. This is Stay Free with Russell Brand. Yes, the only podcast named after an old tampon ad from 1990. And good Lord. Again, it wouldn't be a big deal if he hadn't sold us 3 different storylines about how the United States was behind it. But now that the Germans have put out a warrant for the arrest of a Ukrainian diver who may or may not have been involved in it, that means Deep State Operatives. Just the fact that Deep State Operative came out of his face just means my only thought is he has to have like a checklist from whoever his paid handlers are. Like the people that, like, you know what I mean, that pay for his show from Russia or wherever the fuck. That it's the only thing that makes it, you gotta, they used to have this thing, I don't know if you know this, but on CSI Miami, it was shot in Huntington Beach, California. That's true. And the big building that they used for their main office is an old, like, high school that was really modern looking, but then it didn't work very well, so they moved the site, and so they had this really nice building, and so they used this. That was the outside of the CSI building or whatever. But for international sales of CSI Miami, it had to have 2 shots of Miami an episode, exterior shots that sold the show as being in Miami, and the cast had to fly down once a month to do these kind of like walking in Miami zoom out shots, and then they would shoot the rest of the episode, and they would insert these shots in so that people watching in India or whatever were like, wow, Miami's awesome. You're like, no, actually Huntington Beach is lovely this time of year. But they had to guarantee 2 Miami shots per, that had to be live. They had to be real. They couldn't be CG. They couldn't be just randomly cut together. They couldn't be driving shots. You had to show the actors there. So it really had to tie the story in, right? Or they wouldn't, or they would break their syndication agreement. They had to deliver these things, right? That's what it seems like with this. It's like he's got to say Deep State Operative and, establishment or something, 16 times an hour, or he won't get paid. Oh, God. What the hell?
This person, although I would never miss the opportunity to say innocent until proven guilty, is a reminder of the power of new media, that they can convey their propaganda, but it will be countenanced. Most of us no longer believe them. Most of us no longer trust them. The next American presidential election will be a showdown between new media and old media.
What? You just showed an uninterrupted, like, 3-minute clip or 2-minute clip on your show to shore up your version of a story. You fabricate this idea that a Ukrainian diver is part of the deep state. What the hell? All right, somebody's got to ask this asshole what the phrase deep state even means. Good Lord. All right, I'm ejecting. We're pulling out of this because I don't have, like, some holes are just too deep to go down when you're on vacation. It's not possible. But I would like to say, I guess the blessing of that clip, if I may, because it goes back to one of our old chestnuts that we've dealt with a bunch of times, is that's how much he's dying. As much as he was saying, this new media is really doing so well that people don't believe the regular media anymore. They believe us. No, they don't. Asshole. Like, what an ironic twist that's his takeaway from that clip of Der Welt or whatever the German news agency saying that they believe us, they don't believe you, after he sold 3 different versions of this story and all of them have turned out to be wrong. And he's like, we don't even believe these things anymore because if we did, we'd realize that I've been talking out of my asshole for years. Which is indeed, by the way, the case. Period. End of story. That's exactly what's going on.